Welcome to the AnzenGuard podcast, the podcast where we like to really dig into topics that matter to your security and peace of mind. I'm Michael Reynolds.
And I'm Laura Wilson.
And today we are talking about a pair of terms that I feel like I hear everywhere these days.
Oh, yeah.
And people use them interchangeably, I feel like, but they are not the same thing.
Definitely not.
Credit card fraud and identity theft.
Right. And it's really important to know the difference.
It is, because the difference is knowing how to protect yourself.
Exactly.
So when we talk about credit card fraud, what we are talking about is someone using your credit card or your debit card or whatever other payment tool you've got without your permission.
That's right. Yeah. Or like one of those digital wallets.
Yeah, like Apple Pay or something.
Exactly. And they're just trying to get money or property using your card.
Right. So that could be someone physically stole your card,
Mm-hmm.
or it could be that they somehow got your information online, or maybe it was even part of identity theft.
Right. It could be a data breach where a whole bunch of cards get stolen.
Yeah. So it's really focused on the card itself,
Mm-hmm.
the 16 digits and that little expiration date.
The CVV on the back.
Right. But when we talk about identity theft,
Yeah.
we're talking about something a lot bigger than that, right?
Yes. Much bigger. This is where they are after you as a person.
Oh, wow.
Not just your card. They want your name, they want your address, your social security number, everything they can get their hands on.
So it's like they want to become you.
Yeah, pretty much. They want to use your identity to do things like open new accounts or even commit crimes under your name.
So that's not just about someone buying a TV on your dime. This is like someone creating a whole fake you out there in the world.
Yeah, and that can really mess things up for you.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I was reading about this guy, Daniel Ahmed, who's actually a credit card writer. I think he writes about credit cards.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he got a brand new Chase Sapphire Reserve card. Super excited about it.
Nice card.
Right.
Ah.
And the first time he uses it is at a restaurant. And then within 2 days, he's got almost $10,000 in unauthorized charges.
Wow, 2 days. That's insane.
Right. It just goes to show how quickly things can go wrong.
Absolutely. You think you're safe and then bam.
And he's a credit card writer.
I know, right? You think he'd know how to protect himself?
So what's interesting about credit card fraud, though, is that there are some pretty strong legal protections in place for victims.
Yeah, that's the good news, at least with credit card fraud.
So what are we talking about? Like, what kind of legal protections exist?
Well, for starters, there is the Fair Credit Billing Act.
Catchy.
It's also called the FCBA for short. And this limits your liability for fraud to just $50 as long as you report it within 60 days.
Oh, wow. So even in Daniel's case, he would not have been on the hook for that $10,000.
Exactly. And then for debit cards, there is the Electronic Funds Transfer Act. That's the EFTA. And this one caps your liability at $500.
Okay.
But if you report it really quickly within 2 business days, then it drops down to $50 too.
So whether it's credit or debit, the key is to act quickly.
Absolutely. The sooner you report it, the better.
But it sounds like credit cards still offer more protection overall.
They do tend to have better fraud protection, and most major credit card networks also have zero liability policies these days.
Oh, nice.
So if you report fraud right away, you are usually completely off the hook.
Okay, so that's reassuring.
Mm-hmm.
Credit card fraud is definitely a headache, but it sounds manageable with the right protections.
Yeah, for sure. But identity theft, that's where things get a little scarier.
Yeah, because that can cause real long-term damage.
Right. With credit card fraud, you can just cancel your card, maybe dispute a charge or two and move on. But with identity theft, it can haunt you for years.
Years? Really?
Yeah, they can open accounts, take out loans in your name, even commit crimes using your identity. It's like a shadow following you around.
It really makes you realize how important it is to understand this stuff and not just brush it off as something that happens to other people.
It can happen to anyone, and that's why we're here to talk about it.
Absolutely, and that's why we're going to break down exactly how these identity thieves operate. And most importantly, what you can do to protect yourself.
Stay tuned.
So how do these identity thieves even get our information in the first place? I feel like it's got to be some super complicated hacking scheme.
You would think, right?
Yeah.
But actually, a lot of it is surprisingly low tech.
Really?
Yeah, they might just steal your wallet straight up or even go dumpster diving for documents you've thrown away.
Wait, people really go through trash looking for personal information?
Oh, yeah, all the time. It's called dumpster diving, and it's way more common than you think. But, of course, the online methods are a big deal, too. We've all heard about those data breaches where hackers steal information from companies, and then there are phishing scams where they trick you into giving up your info through fake emails or websites.
It's like they've got a whole toolkit, both online and offline. So we
Exactly.
really have to be careful everywhere.
You got it. Vigilance is key.
So we've talked about how credit card fraud and identity theft are different and all the ways our information can be compromised. But let's talk about what to do if it actually happens.
Okay, that's the important part, right? What do we do if we become a victim?
Exactly. So let's start with credit card fraud.
Yeah.
What's the game plan if you see some weird charges on your statement?
First thing, don't panic. I know it's easy to freak out when you see that, but remember, you do have those protections in place.
Right, right.
So the first step is to report the fraud to your card issuer right away.
Okay.
That's going to help limit your liability and get the process started of shutting down that compromised card.
Right. So quick action is key. And this is where it really helps to have a credit card versus a debit card because the protections are stronger.
Exactly.
Okay. So credit card fraud, we report it. Quickly move on, hopefully with minimal damage. But identity theft, this is where it seems like things can get a little more complicated.
Yeah, a little bit, but there are still some steps you can take to reclaim your identity and limit the damage.
Okay. So first line of defense, what do we do?
Your credit reports, those are going to be your best friend in this situation. You want to place fraud alerts on your reports with all 3 credit bureaus. So that's Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian.
Okay.
It's like sending up a flare to lenders saying, hey, double check this person's identity before you approve any new credit applications.
Right. So it adds an extra layer of security, making it tougher for the fraudsters to open new accounts in your name.
Exactly. And if you want to be extra safe, you can even consider freezing your credit reports.
Freezing your credit? Now that sounds intense. What does that even mean?
It's basically like putting a padlock on your credit file. No new lenders can access your reports unless you unfreeze them with a special PIN or password.
So no one can open new accounts even if they have your information.
Pretty much, it makes it almost impossible.
Wow, that does sound like ultimate peace of mind.
It is, but it does come with a little bit of extra hassle if you need to apply for credit yourself.
Right, you'd have to unfreeze it temporarily.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, that extra security is worth it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've got fraud alerts, we've got credit freezes, all about locking things down.
Yeah.
But is there anything we can do to like monitor for suspicious activity proactively?
Absolutely. And this is where checking your credit reports regularly comes in.
Okay.
You can get free copies from annualcreditreport.com. I recommend doing it at least once a year, if not more often.
Okay.
And just look for any accounts or inquiries that you don't recognize. Those could be signs that someone's messing with your identity.
It's like checking your bank statements, but for your credit history.
Exactly. And if you see something fishy, don't wait. Report it immediately to the FTC's identitytheft.gov website.
That's a good one to know.
They have a ton of resources there to help you through the recovery process, and they can also help you notify the credit bureaus.
Perfect. So we've talked about what to do if fraud or identity theft happens, but what about preventing it in the first place? Are there any things we can do to make ourselves less attractive targets?
Being smart about how you share your information is huge, and that goes for both online and offline.
Okay, so what does that look like practically?
It means being careful what you post on social media, shredding any documents with sensitive info before you throw them away, and always be wary of phishing scams. Remember, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Right. Trust your gut. And what about all these data breaches we hear about constantly? It feels like they're happening more and more. Is there anything we can do to protect ourselves when those happen?
Staying informed is a good place to start. There are websites like haveibeenpaned.com where you can check if your email address has been compromised in any known breaches.
Oh, that's handy. So it's like a breach notification system.
Exactly. And then if you find out your info is part of a breach, change your passwords on those accounts right away.
Good call. Are there any specific things we can do to safeguard our credit card information aside from just watching out for phishing scams?
Strong, unique passwords for all your online accounts are essential. Don't use the same password for multiple sites. That's like giving a thief a master key. And consider using a password manager to help you keep track of all those complicated passwords.
Oh, yeah, those are lifesavers. It's impossible to remember all that stuff.
I know, right?
So we've talked a lot about the differences between credit card fraud and identity theft. But I'm curious, are there any statistics out there that show us just how big of a problem this really is?
Oh, there are some pretty crazy numbers out there. In the first half of 2024 alone, over 552,000 identity theft cases were reported. That puts it on track to surpass the total from 2023.
Wow, so this isn't just a few isolated incidents. This is a widespread issue.
It really is, and credit card fraud is the most common type of identity theft.
Oh, wow. And is there a certain age group that's more likely to be targeted?
Interestingly, people between 30 and 39 seem to be the most common victims.
Huh. What do you think that is?
Maybe it's because they are in that stage of life where they are really managing their finances and making a lot of online transactions.
That makes sense. And what about the ways criminals are doing this new account fraud? I think we touched on that earlier. Are there any trends there?
Yeah, new account fraud is way more common than existing account fraud. Like 90% of all credit card fraud cases are new account fraud.
So it's not just stealing your card details. It's using your stolen information to open whole new accounts.
Exactly. And there is a really scary trend on the rise called synthetic identity theft.
Synthetic identity theft. That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
I know, it's where they blend real and fake information to create a totally new identity. It makes them really hard to track down.
So they're like masterminds out there.
Pretty much the fight against identity theft is constantly evolving.
Yeah, it feels like it. And data breaches are a huge part of that problem, right?
Absolutely. In 2023 alone, there were over 3,205 reported data compromises. That was a record high, although fewer individuals were impacted than the previous year.
So the number of breaches is going up, even if the individual impact might vary.
Right. And it's not always about hackers breaking into systems. Human error plays a big role too, like a lost laptop or a misplaced flash drive. It can have huge consequences.
It's a good reminder that data security has to be a multi-pronged approach.
Absolutely, got to cover all the bases. And speaking of safeguards, there's one more thing we should mention for those who are really concerned about the fallout from cybercrime. Cyber insurance.
Oh, I've heard of that, but I don't really know much about it. What is it exactly?
Think of it like a safety net specifically for cyber attacks. So that includes data breaches and identity theft. It helps protect you from the financial and reputational damage that can result from those things.
So it's like extra protection for the digital age, helping you recover if something bad happens.
Exactly. It can cover legal expenses, the cost of notifying people if their info is compromised, and even credit monitoring services.
So it's not just about the immediate financial hit. It's about the long-term consequences and the stress of trying to pick up the pieces afterwards.
Exactly. It gives you peace of mind knowing you've got support if something goes wrong.
That makes a lot of sense. So as we're wrapping up this part of our deep dive, it's clear that credit card fraud and identity theft, while they are different, they are interconnected and both super important to understand.
Absolutely. They can both have a serious impact on your financial well-being, and being proactive is really the key to minimizing your risk.
It's all about taking control and making sure we're doing everything we can to protect ourselves.
You got it. Knowledge is power.
It really is all about being in the driver's seat, being proactive, not just waiting for something bad to happen.
Right. Taking control.
So let's recap what we've talked about today. Credit card fraud is about someone using your card without your permission. Identity theft is way more serious. They're trying to steal your entire identity.
Exactly.
Both can have a big impact, but identity theft, those consequences can last for years.
That's right.
And we've covered a ton of information today, but really we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, there's so much more to learn about this stuff.
There is, but thankfully there are resources out there to help us.
Absolutely. A great place to start is the FTC's website, identitytheft.gov.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one. What kind of stuff can people find there?
It's got everything you need, tips, advice, tools to help you really understand and deal with identity theft and fraud.
So if you're feeling overwhelmed after listening to this deep dive, don't worry, you're not alone, and there is help available.
Exactly.
Hopefully this conversation has given you the knowledge to understand those key differences between credit card fraud and identity theft. And most importantly, start taking steps to protect yourself.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Knowledge is power, as they say.
It really is. The more you know, the better equipped you are.
Right. And on that note, we want to thank you for tuning in to the AnzenGuard podcast.
I'm Laura Wilson.
And I'm Michael Reynolds. We're here to help you stay safe in a world where information is more valuable than ever.
Than ever before.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share this episode with anyone who might benefit from this information.
Spread the word.
Until next time, stay vigilant, stay safe.
And protect your data.